better.
It's working.
There we go. See?
Do you have your screen rotation locked?
I don't
What?
know.
Okay,
Probably.
fair enough. Well, anyway.
Mary Kate, what'd you do differently this time?
I don't know. I said the Divine Mercy Chaplet in my head while I was doing it.
There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you, Faustina.
Boom slam. Yes. That's awesome.
Spiritual warfare, bro.
Okay, but now the link is different. So now we have to, I'm going to put the link in the Zoom chat and then you guys can.
Super.
Perfect.
Oh, can you guys hear that? There's going to be an echo. We're all going to have to mute the video on our screens. Wow, and then that's me dancing, doing a happy dance on YouTube. Okay.
Wait, what? What?
I'm gonna put this in the chat and then you guys can, you're gonna have to, are you on YouTube right now?
No.
No.
Here's the link. Okay. Now we just have to hope that this is the way it's supposed to be. Because we're live, we're on YouTube right now.
We're on the YouTube.
On the YouTubes.
Did you guys see I just sent the link in this in the
Got it.
stream, in the chat, I mean. Okay. I'm in like the most uncomfortable sitting position possible. You can probably see my mess behind me.
Well, get yourself comfortable. Wait, so it's
Get
streaming
yourself
right now?
comfortable. Yep, we're
It's
streaming
streaming.
right now.
Oh. Hello. World.
What's up?
Okay, just hold on. Hold, everyone hold, please. All right, wait. It's so funny that, hold on. I'm just commenting on Facebook really quick. Did you guys, can someone post the updated link in Slack? I assume someone did that.
I can do that right now.
Okay, now.
Nice.
It's too late. I got it.
Damn it.
Thank
I mean,
you
dang it.
very much.
Dang it.
Okay.
Gee, dang it.
Got to censor myself for the Utes out there.
Good point.
Nice. All right. We live, guys.
All right, we did
Are
it.
you guys reading the chat? Can you?
No.
The chat on Facebook or YouTube?
So should we get the ball rolling now that we're live and the connection's working and I don't want to waste a single minute?
Woo!
You guys
Sounds
good to go?
good.
Was it the
Cool.
original link that you sent out or no?
It's the second one.
No, different link. So I put the link, Zach, the link's in the chat in the Zoom group.
Oh, okay.
I also posted it in the comments on my Facebook post and I think John posted it in Slack. Okay,
Kevin posted
we're
in
live,
Slack.
guys. We're
Yeah.
here. It's
All right.
happening. The Chicago Inquisition. Yes,
Heck
I'm
yeah.
pumped. All right, cool. So now that I'm sitting in the middle of my floor to get a good Wi-Fi connection. So now that I'm here, I'm just gonna move my stuff. Okay. So let's do, I don't know who's like, I think that a lot of people who are watching are people that know us, but I think that for the people who don't know us, it's worthwhile for us to go around and sort of do like very brief introductions. And then I can give some context as to what's kind of, actually I'll do context first, then we'll go around and do some quick introductions. So for those of you who don't know me and you're watching, whether it's now or later, my name is Mary Kate Knorr. I know all these guys from St. Alphonsus in Lakeview, right? I think generally speaking, yes, that's true. So we all go to the same parish. We're in the same wonderful young adult community in Chicago. And it's been incredibly fruitful. I think I can say for sure for me, for all of us, to be part of this community. And one of the recent fruits of this community is this group message that about 130 of us are on, where a lot of conversations happen about varying aspects of the faith, what's going on in the world, random memes, sports stuff, whatever. And so this Slack conversation, this like group chat, has kind of brought to fruition this idea that some of us would get on a Zoom call and talk about, specifically today, we're going to talk about coronavirus. What's going on with the virus, with COVID-19, what's going on with the decisions that the church has made with regards to COVID-19. That's going to bother me. What's going on with the way that we as Catholics should respond to that, et cetera, all of these things. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. There's not really a particular significance to the fact that it's the 6 of us talking about it. I think aside from the fact that we are friends, we engage in these conversations already in our personal lives. So it just kind of made sense that we would get on here and put that on a platform that other people can listen and can be a part of it, participate via the YouTube chat. So if you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to at any point comment a question or a comment, whatever. I can't promise that we'll get to all of that, but we will certainly try. So I think it makes sense for all of us, for everyone to kind of go around. As I said, my name is Mary Kate. I'm not currently in the city of Chicago, but I'll be back residing in the city of Chicago in about a month, which I'm pumped about. I think I don't know what order you guys are on each other's screens, but if you want to go around, if everybody wants to go around and just do like a quick intro, who are you? What's your name? What do you do professionally? And yeah, what's your why? Like, why are you interested in partaking in this dialogue that we're about to have?
So I'll go ahead and get us started. My name is John Trainer. I've been in Chicago for about 3 years. Immediately fell in with the St. Alphonsus community. And as Mary Kate said, it has been incredibly fruitful for my faith life and honestly my personal life as well. I now live with 4 guys that I met through St. Alphonsus. So it's been pretty great in that respect. I'd also like to echo Mary Kate's little point that we're conceivably varying levels of qualifications. We have 2 seminarians that we'll get to them in a little bit who know a little bit more. But I would say
some to none, pretty much.
basically. I would say most of us just, well, I guess I'll speak for myself and let the other people speak. Most of my information just comes from self-research and desiring to learn more about the faith and doing that research on my own. So that's where I'm coming from. It's a very, for lack of a better term, not uninformed, but casual understanding. So with that being said, so I professionally just graduated from nursing school, passed my NCLEX, and am currently searching for jobs, which is a little bit interesting in this time. So if you out there want to say some prayers that I can find a job and have gained.
If you want to hire John, hit him up.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who's out there, we'll see.
It's up in the
Post
chat.
your resume on the screen here.
That's right.
I keep getting emails from Lori Lightfoot, so you should just he keeps getting emailing me about nurses needed. So just talk to Lori.
I'll talk to Lori. I'll get in touch with her.
Who knows where she is right
There
now?
you go.
Yeah. Well, I think she's making the rounds, trying to like break up those lack of social distancing. So that being said, that's me. So look forward to chatting with you all.
Nice.
I'll go next. I'm Zach. I'm 30 years old. I live up on the north side of the city. Know a lot of these guys again from the St. Al's community. I've been going to St. Al's for about the past 2 or 3 years or so. Kind of a church gypsy, jump around here all over the place. But
Church.
yeah,
gypsy.
I'm a fireman, paramedic in the north side, up in the north suburbs of Chicago. Been doing emergency services work for probably 10 years now. So been doing that for a little while, and born and raised Catholic. Interest in the faith definitely came back in my late teen years, early 20s. And same as John, a lot of my knowledge, or you couldn't label it expertise, but just knowledge is solely, self-research and digging kind of deep on my own here. Yeah, and so just sharing the St. Al's community with all these people here, and looking forward to jaw-jacking a little bit here.
Nice.
Super. I'll go next, and then we can finish with the seminarians.
Nice.
I'm Evan.
The best for last.
Exactly my thinking. I'm Evan. Originally, I was a teacher at a charter school out in Arizona. I taught for 3 years, middle school math and English. And then I kind of did a career switch, went to this short business program, and now moved to Chicago in the business world. So kind of a drastic change there. And like John was mentioning, pretty much as soon as I moved to Chicago, same story, joined the St. Al's group, got super involved. I also live with 4 guys from St. Al's. In fact, one of them is John. And just a really vibrant community. Love the St. Al's group, and that's kind of what brought me here. I'm pretty active on the Slack channel that Mary Kate was talking about, and love to get into arguments. So I don't really have qualifications either, but I do like to.
Liking to argue is a qualification in and of
I
itself.
agree, John. I think
Let's
you're
actually
right.
let's stop. Let's define what does qualification even mean.
This isn't men's group, Kevin. We don't need to define everything.
All right. Evan, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that intro?
That's a wrap for me.
Evan, where did you go to your MBA school?
Oh, I went to Notre Dame. Go Irish.
First Notre Dame
Classic.
grad, did not mention.
Cheer 4.
Yes.
A Notre
From
Dame
Schaefer,
guy at
shout out.
St. Al's? Holy cow. What the heck?
All right. Kevin, Tim, let's go.
We'll save the best seminarian for last, so I'll go first.
Nice.
Tim Berryhill, seminarian for the Archdiocese of Chicago, studying up at Mundelein Seminary with Kevin. I'm in pre-theology too, so the way that works is you need a philosophy background. So I'm in that second year of philosophy before I start 4 years of theology. Obviously, Mundelein is kind of shut down under the current coronavirus situation, so I'm staying at the rectory of St. Edward's in Mayfair Park on the north side of Chicago with 3 other of my seminarian buddies and 3 priests, and kind of living in community here. Was a convert to the faith, and as soon as I kind of converted, I kind of knew, like, just instinctual, like, yeah, the priesthood, like, that's where I'm being called to. Found St. Al's when I was at the House of Discernment that the Archdiocese of Chicago started. Immediately fell in love with it, and it's not just like, for anybody, I assume most of the viewers are St. Al's people, but for anyone who's not, this is my plug for it. It's not just like a couple of people just get together and like steal donuts kind of deal. Like, no, this is like legit. Like, people, like, this is like a big young adult group in Chicago, and people who are serious about the faith and want to grow. And it's just like a really, really great community at St. Al's. I found them just a little less than 3 years ago and met most of everybody here. So, yeah.
What is that on top of your screen there, Bim?
Yeah, who's your friend?
You know what? Where's the?
You guys are brutal.
There we go.
No!
That's all I have to say about that.
All right, Kev, it's all you.
All right. So my name's Kevin. I am also a seminarian. I'm in first theology, so a year ahead of Tim.
Don't let him forget.
And as Tim said, we're all shut down. Yeah, don't let him forget. We are shut down at Mundelein. So I am at the aforementioned St. Alphonsus. I'm in the rectory.
Hey.
Here back at kind of at home base. I'm actually in the very room that the men's group meets, usually on Thursday nights. And yeah, I've been here with like Tim. I'm here with some classmates. One is actually a occasional slacker. He's upstairs, and then another guy from my class.
Slacker. By slacker, he means person who participates on Slack.
And he's also an occasional.
Actually, kind of occasional slacker. Actually, no, Dan is not a slacker. He is far from.
Well, it's holy
I
leisure.
don't think Dan's
it's
a
holy
slacker,
leisure, not
no.
slack.
No. Right. I'm originally from the far northwest suburbs, where like the place where people who are actually from Chicago are insulted that I even call Crystal Lake a suburb. But that's where I'm from. I've had a career in the aerospace field before I started seminary 3 years ago. It's kind of crazy. I'm almost a month away from being halfway done, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. Of course, I did not think this is how my third year was going to end at Mundelein, but here we are, locked down in a rectory.
Limbo.
You guys, I think that's a really good way to start. We kind of talked about this a little bit when we sort of went over some of this stuff on Friday, but like Tim and Kevin, I think coronavirus has very clearly shook up your lives. I think, it's affected all of us, but you guys have been, literally removed from your usual day-to-day life. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like what's that been like? What has been the hardest, and what has surprised you about, surprised you the most about this time?
I think the biggest thing is how jarring it was. There's like about 3 Fridays ago, we were supposed to go to class at 9:15 like usual, and all of a sudden we're all brought together in this room, and our rector told us, hey, in accordance with CDC and the City of Chicago and the Archdiocese of Chicago, we're going to shut down the seminary. All are going to move off-site, and you're going to continue classes online, which in and of itself is like, okay, we got to do what we got to do. It's kind of a bit of a surprise there. But I think one of the saddest things is that for the deacons and for the guys who are going to be moving on to other seminaries, like that was their last day. And they didn't give us a whole lot of time. It was a couple days in, like, hey, you got to be somewhere in just a few days. And so that was, I think, the biggest thing for a lot of us was all these like relationships that we had built, these friendships built over years. Suddenly it's like it ends very quickly. Well, not ends, but like these people are going back to their diocese and that's it, and so it's just very jarring at how quickly it spread and everything.
Right. Kev, you got anything to add to that? Is Kevin frozen?
Yeah, sorry. There's some. I tried to do some hardwire into my computer. It wasn't working. Now I'm on Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
You're good. No, you're good now. I didn't know if you were just like thinking very hard or.
And very still.
I am never thinking very hard. You can rest assured yourself of that. I mean, it was. I think the jarring part was big. It was. Mundelein in the spring's a very kind of, it's a different place than it is in the fall. There's 2 classes that are actually off campus. There's one. The second year class is on internship in their home diocese, and then the third year class is in the Holy Land, doing a pilgrimage there. And so it's kind of like this. So all the pre-theologians are there, which is Tim's class, the first theologians, which is my class, and then all the deacons, the guys who are going to be priests in, for some of them. Well, now there's ordination delays and whatnot, craziness, but like less than 2 months, some of these guys are going to be ordained priests. And so it's kind of this cool time to like, it changes some, it's a little smaller. You get to know the deacon class a lot. So I was enjoying that, kind of bonding with the deacon class, and I just kind of like ripped away very suddenly. Like, I hope I see some of these guys again. But it's the rector. I mean, we're still taking classes online, for, if you're wondering. I'm sure like anyone out there who, if you're watching and you're in college, what the whole online class thing is. It's very interesting. I don't prefer it in any way. I know there's a few guys in my class who actually are really loving this time, because there's, all the demands of seminary are kind of lessened in the sense of like, there's very little ministry we can be doing right now. There's just a lot of things we're asked to do that they can only ask us to do so much right now because we're all away. And so a little more for prayer, which is nice. Some being able to cook for ourselves. That's been actually kind of fun. We had one of our guys made tacos tonight. They were delicious. And if you're wondering, I do want to share that I am double fisting bubbly and bourbon. Highly recommended. This is Illinois bourbon from DeKalb, Illinois.
Whiskey Acres.
Yeah, delicious stuff.
Excellent.
That's exact that you would know that.
Pinky up too.
I wish it was because I was fancy, but it's because my hands are so freakishly huge that they.
It doesn't fit.
They literally don't fit on the glass.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so that you say it, we're more disruptive. I mean, everyone. I mean, there's so many people that are. My sister is a teacher. I mean, she. From home, my brother-in-law in construction management, he's doing from home. It's just kind of it's just that it's just seminarians that are. Nice. Thankfully for seminarians, it's like the financial burden right now we're not feeling it. Whereas I know a lot of young adults and families are feeling that way more than we could. So like that added stress level is something we're not experiencing, directly on our own lives. I mean, we're certainly seeing it, but
Right.
Yeah.
So what about you guys, John, Zach, Evan? It's been, I know there are things for me that I've been surprised have been hard for me, that I like wouldn't have anticipated. Like it's the things that I didn't expect that are some of the hardest. So I'm curious for you guys, what has quarantining been like? How has it surprised you and what's been hard?
Well, so I'll say what's been hard for me hasn't really surprised me at all. I have family that I obviously can't visit, so that's the hardest part. The quarantine itself, in the day to day, has not changed a whole heck of a lot. Like I mentioned in my intro, I'm living with 4 of these guys, so I definitely can empathize with the people that might not have roommates, and how hard that must be. I can't imagine. But yeah, I mean, thankfully, I have the roommates that, we've set a pretty consistent schedule with some liturgy hours and some rosaries, to continue praying and still have that schedule built into our lives, which I think is probably one of the most important things that any of us can do during this time, is to still schedule things, because especially you're working from home and you're not quite as tied to the clock as you are when you're on the job. It can be easy to just kind of let your day go and find yourself being a lot less productive than usual. So yeah, keeping that schedule has been huge, and then obviously still being able to live in community, as the seminaries mentioned that they're able to at their rectories. But that has been massive for me, and has probably made it easier than I'm sure it is on some other people.
Yeah.
I mean, along similar lines, I mean, I kind of have the luxury of living with, 2 other guys also right now. And it's been, I mean, the actual quarantine life itself is, I don't know, it's kind of like my day-to-day life anyway, because I have 2 days off in between shifts. So kind of nice to have people around the house with me now.
Yeah.
That sounds lazy. I don't know, but
Like you're on vacation.
just a lot of bubbly and bourbon. Yeah.
That's right. The 2 B's, as I like to call them.
The 2 B's.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, being quarantined in the apartment, that's not really that big of a deal. It's actually, it's nice for some things because, you have a couple of people around you all day, and, it doesn't affect my day-to-day life too much, apart from, obviously the amount of people that you would be visiting otherwise, and, going out to restaurants here and there sort of thing. By and large, the biggest thing, life change for me has been, the change in schedule or lack thereof of, mass and any sort of church services whatsoever. That's been by and large the biggest change, and the biggest void, in the schedule right now.
Yeah.
Apart from just driving down, anytime you drive down in the loop or anywhere near the city, it's weird to be, among a few people on the road. Lori ain't going to catch me.
She almost caught me on the L the other day.
Yeah, you'll have to talk about that.
Talk about how Big Brother is watching.
Big brother,
Always.
little brother,
Little
sister.
There you go.
Let's keep it PC, okay?
Evan.
I'm just kidding. Evan, what's up?
I think pretty much John and Zach already said everything that I had to say. I mean, super
You don't
lucky
have a lot
to
of
have
thoughts. That's true.
super lucky to have the rooming situation that I have. And I can work from home. So it's been kind of nice not to have to commute. So I count myself really lucky for all of that, because a lot of people have it much more difficult right now.
Yeah.
Are you guys sitting in the same room? Can you reach across and grab each other's hand?
I wish. No, we're not.
Through the wall.
Originally, we were gonna be on the same laptop, but Mary Kate put the kibosh on that real quick. Kinda set
I like the
boundaries.
6 squares.
It
It's aesthetically
balances
pleasing.
well. It balances well. You're right.
It does. And also you
I
guys
mean-
aren't like echoing or like, you know,
That's true.
it's
That's a good point. See,
it's good.
and I should default to her on these matters because she obviously has more experience with it than I do. However, I am incredibly stubborn.
YouTube streams. Yeah,
With-
well, that
with
clearly backfired on me
live
today
streams in
because
general.
yeah.
I wouldn't even gotten the link up. You know, I didn't even have Zoom until Friday. I downloaded Zoom on Friday.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh,
What am I
okay.
using Zoom for? You know, but
Well, I guess that's true. So, okay, Zach, you mentioned it. This is the
What did I mention?
elephant in the room. Let's just get it out there.
Yeah.
No sacraments. We haven't been to mass in how long has it been? Has it been 3 full Sundays yet?
I
Has it been
think
2
so.
Sundays?
4,
3.
3.
It's been
Kevin says
4?
3.
3.
Oh no, okay, so it doesn't feel like 4 because the first weekend my sister's baby was baptized the day before, so I did get to go to mass that weekend.
Ooh.
Oh, you're right. It has
Okay.
been 4.
Yeah. I can only count
been
it by
4.
the masses that because I watched a Holy Name Mass and then I watched 3 St. John Institute masses. So, shout out to Father
I have
Nathan.
questions about why you choose to watch Holy Name online of all things. But anyway, sorry, never mind. I didn't mean that. I'm just kidding. I didn't mean that. Okay, so here's my question. I didn't mean that. Okay, it was just a joke, you guys. It was just a joke. Okay.
Man, there'd be a lot of people hating us within the first 15 minutes of this
I mean, they
thing.
can hate me. It's okay. No one else consented to that joke. It was my joke. Okay. So what are your thoughts about this? I mean, now, okay, so actually, and if maybe one of the seminarians, if you guys want to sort of just give a quick, like, let's give us an aerial view of what the cardinal said about, or I guess what the diocese put out about Easter and services over Holy Week. This is a really big deal. I don't think in the history of the church has this ever happened.
So aerial view, we should go to Tim. He's got that aerial experience. So
That's a good point.
Literally and figuratively, Tim.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that in my intro. Yeah, helicopter pilot. Yeah, whatever.
Oh yeah, no big deal.
No
They're in
big
the
deal, you
lead.
guys.
Get those
NBD.
choppa. All right.
All right, Tim, tell us. Why is Marty offended in the YouTube chat right now?
Marty's offended?
He's
Oh,
He just
no.
said I'm
he's a Holy
offended.
Name stan. He stands.
Probably because of Holy
Oh,
Name.
holy
Don't let
name.
Marty hold this up.
Okay, somebody give us the explanation on what the Arch decided for Easter and Holy Week.
So bird's eye view. So there's kind of a question in the beginning when they first dispensed everyone from their Sunday obligations, because I think there's Canon 213 that kind of states that the faithful have a right to receive communion once a year and to attend
Obligation.
service
to-
obligation for Easter, because that's part of the precepts of the church is that you attend mass and receive communion at least once a year, or at least for the reception end of it. And so I can't remember how long ago, it was just a couple of days ago, that in addition to all this whole litany of things that come out from the Archdiocese, as the situation develops, they send out new documents that kind of say, hey, we can't do certain things. And then so they, I think a couple of days ago, just finally dispense the faithful from their obligations for Easter. And that's a bunch of canon law stuff that's like way above my head, but that's what the Archdiocese put out. Similarly, we were talking about it a few days ago about confessions. There was drive-through confessions, and the Archdiocese said, no, we're going to adhere to normative procedures per canon law.
Yeah. So give me your like any of you, whoever wants to jump in, give me your gut response to all of this stuff. I mean, we hear a lot about, okay, have to be obedient to the hierarchy, which that's true. We hear about the plague. This isn't how they handled it in the plague, but also there's, scientifically we're further along with technology than we were then. We know that this is, spread via, particles in the air and, things like that, whatever. what's your initial take on some of this stuff? You know, what's your gut response?
Well,
Zach, my friend.
there's one word that is, pretty glaring in all of that, and it's nothing. We have nothing. The archdiocese, there's the canon law stuff that's way over, I'd say probably all of our heads. None of us are, canon lawyers or anything like that. But it's pretty darn depressing to look around the country and see other bishops, at least, you have like Strickland in Texas and, the several stand-up bishops around the country, actually trying to find creative solutions to this sort of thing, at least give access to some of the sacraments to the people. And in Chicago, we got a big fat nothing,
Yeah, I mean, like what, how's that going over here? I'm sorry. But what Tim was talking about with the drive-through confessions in other dioceses, I'm seeing a lot of that on Twitter, and there's a lot of places where that's happening, and to me it seems pretty easy to do. Maintain that 6 feet, be able to confess to the priest still. However, it was ruled against doing that in Chicago, which, like you said, you have to be obedient to your bishop, and so I'm not trying to seek out any underground confessions or anything like that. But as Zach said, it's just, it's frustrating to see what other areas have access to that we don't here in Chicago. And I'm missing it. Every Sunday
I'll say even further, I'll push it a little further. And I recently, actually just today before this, watched Cardinal Supich's address on April 1st to the faithful, talking about, essentially how Holy Week is, we're all dispensed from Holy Week and whatnot. And I couldn't help but think, me and my roommate were laughing, kind of like looking back at each other, when he said, he describes all necessary services, praising the people who are going to work in necessary services, like grocery stores, gas station. And then there's just this big gaping hole, like, what the heck do you consider the Catholic Church? Looking at it from that perspective, it was just ridiculous to me that, the sacraments are not really viewed as being necessary services. From that glimpse, just from having that little bit of video, it was just kind of, I don't know, it really turned me off, honestly, quite a bit. Somebody's got to.
Yeah, I'm trying not to do all the talking here.
I know Kevin and Tim have thoughts. I'm waiting for them to.
I think one of the things is, like, there's this, you have canon law, and there's right now there's this like kind of strict adherence to it, at least in the archdiocese, and it's just, on a normal day-to-day basis, how strict. Canon law always has this like thing with it, with like in pastoral need, you can basically get rid of canon law. I shouldn't say get rid of it, but like if in an emergency, you can, a lay person can baptize a baby. There's things that, like, where in these extreme situations, canon law, it's not supposed to be this thing that binds us. It's like, like a regular law, like, speeding to get your pregnant wife to the hospital, something like that. Mm-hmm. And it seems that there's this desire, especially with like the confession thing. The confession one is the one that really gets to me. The mass one, I know it's the most unfortunate, but it's the one that I can most understand, is because it brings so many people together, fairly close, and it's hard to maintain that, the recommended 6 feet social distancing, mm-hmm. and it necessarily attracts a lot of older people who are more susceptible for this disease to be fatal. And so that one makes sense. The confession one is time. It's structure can't make. There's not exceptions that can be made, or distributing sacramentals, holy water, palms. I mean, we just passed Palm Sunday, and I mean, there's no palms here to St. Alphonsus to even distribute. So, or even displaying images outside the church, so people are walking around Chicago. I mean, I was out today. I've been out most days. It's like, it is weird. Like you try to start like not taking it personally when you're walking down the sidewalk and another person like sees you and like crosses to their side. You're like, it's the distancing.
Don't breathe on me.
Yeah, don't breathe. Yeah, hopefully my shirt isn't offensive or something like that. But
Sure.
it's just that you think that in this extreme time when like the church should be, like Zach said, like it's the most essential thing in a lot of Catholics' lives, and for it to like just disappear like this in this time, and
Yeah.
People ask for more right now. I mean, and people are putting up things for free. There was just this big conference over the weekend that was like pretty much any who's who of Catholic names participated. Father Mike Schmitz did an online retreat. I mean, it's out there, but there's still, there's only so much you can do, and and we're trying to like throw out a bunch of all this online content, and I don't think anyone's trying to like say like, well, try to distract from the lack of no sacraments, but I don't know. At some point, it almost feels like, well, it's just, this is good enough. I don't know. I say that that's very unqualified. And
so, what do you think? What do you think and again, this is for any of you. Could there be spiritual? I don't know. I guess we can't predict what the type of fallout from this, but I guess what are the consequences of this? Like, what are the consequences of not having any public sacraments in the entire city of Chicago? And I preface that with like I see how God could be using this. And maybe if you want to talk about that too, I for sure see how God could be using this whole scenario. But what are some of the different sides of this? We could be suffering spiritually on this one hand. On this other hand, this is increasing our desire for the sacraments in the way that I think a lot of people have never experienced in their lives. And that's beautiful. So like, what's your perspective on that? And that's for any of you,
And that's certainly the perspective of St. Augustine. He said something to the effect that, that God allowed for sin to happen in order for us to kind of have a more fuller understanding of grace and truth and his love. And so I can absolutely see what you're saying with like, you don't know what you have till, what's that mantra? Like, you don't know what you have until you've lost it, kind of deal. Yeah. Yeah. I can see a lot of people suddenly like, who are maybe just going to church, going through the shuffle, it's just a typical thing in their life. Like, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's taken away from them and they're stuck at home and they got nothing to do except like watch Tiger King. And they're like, what does my life come to? And,
oh, Tiger King.
Yeah. Sorry I mentioned it, but yeah, I mean, I could see this. I could see like a greater kind of thing, like stirring in people's hearts, that when it's taken away from them, suddenly it's like, oh, now I'm interested. Yeah.
Well, so I kind of see it going one of two ways, right? So, and probably both depending on the person. So, I think those people that are already pretty faithful, pretty on fire with the faith, I think it will instill even greater love of the Eucharist and longing for the Eucharist. But and there could be those people on the fence that, like Tim mentioned, don't know what they have until it's gone. I think from like kind of an outside perspective, or maybe like a fallen away Catholic perspective, I think one of the most appealing things that I've heard from whether non-Catholics in general, I guess it doesn't really matter what kind of non-Catholic they are, but one thing that I've heard they find very appealing about the Catholic Church is just how steady it is. It's just consistent. One person in particular, they were talking about how their church would kind of go on break during the summer because everyone would be on their summer vacation, so they wouldn't have church services over the summer. And she mentioned like, wow, okay, the Catholic Church, they know what they're doing. They still have it all the time. So I mean, I think that's probably you get those people that now see, oh, I guess it's not quite as steady as it once was. So maybe
Well, that's
they,
just the thing. That's one of the most confusing things looking from the outside in right now, especially as, you know, the Catholic Church in America, just the disparity between how different bishops are even responding to this in the first place is incredibly confusing if you're looking from the outside in, you know? I mean, are these things important? Are they not? What's the difference between, you know, a priest coming in and visiting somebody who's sick on their deathbed, between, you know, like nurses and doctors walking in and out of some room all day too? I mean, like there's a million things that you could bring up with this. There's so many inconsistencies, and I mean, it really just feels like in some areas, rather than kind of get dirty and, you know, kind of bite the bullet and accept the fact that, hey, I mean, if it's a genuine pandemic situation, some people are going to get sick, some people are going to die.
well, I'll jump in right there.
Go for it.
From my understanding and what I've seen of various priests, the issue on visiting sick people in hospitals more comes down to the hospital itself than the whatever diocese they're
Right.
from. So it's what maybe it needs to be fought more. I don't know, but it's, from my understanding, it's more the hospital administration not seeing the sacrament of anointing the sick
That's interesting.
as a necessary thing to allow an outsider who could be bringing in the coronavirus, to allow that outsider in. I don't think it's at least in most cases, it's not the bishop
Right.
saying don't go into the hospitals. So.
Right. Well, and that's also, I mean, to be clear too, as far as my understanding is in the archdiocese, there's priests who are assigned to go to hospital, right? Kevin, Tim, that's correct, right? There's like 4
Yes.
priests who are assigned to that duty.
Four priests per vicariate, so a total
Per
of
vicariate.
4
Oh,
So
on
it's
a volunteer basis.
right.
They're healthy, they're a certain age, and anytime I think they have to. Anyone who's living with them, there's like quarantine. Anytime you expose yourself to them, there's quarantine. There's different regulations you have to follow once you finish seeing a COVID patient.
Gotcha. Okay.
so you guys, how should Catholics, how should people, Christians, Catholics, I guess we're talking mostly about the faith, the Catholic faith. How should Catholics receive all of this and respond to it? I think it's easy. You get a mix, right? So like on social media, you get people who are like so pissed and they're like, I'm going to go find a mass. I mean, I remember there was like a thread on Facebook when the first weekend happened that somebody posted asking if there were any underground masses, and it just like unleashed this long thread of people arguing about whether or not that was appropriate and whether or not people should be seeking out masses. How should we receive this, and how should we respond to it? And say like you totally disagree with it. What is the best way that we can like order ourselves toward the good and toward obedience, and like receive what's happening around us and respond to it in a Catholic integrated way? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Just essentially how to respond to this, to all of this right now. I mean, there's, you know, I don't know, I guess I'll just talk again too. I mean, I think for our part, obviously prayer is the most important thing.
Evan,
like,
you should interrupt people if you have something to say. You've not said anything yet.
I will, don't
Zach,
worry.
No, Zach, go. I'm just teasing. I want to hear what you're going to say.
No, I mean, I guess just from a layperson's perspective, you know, I mean, the best we have, you know, not to make it sound insignificant because it's always significant, but prayer, you know, one thing that's brought to my attention a lot, and, you know, just in case people might get the perception that, you know, I'm not sympathetic to priests or bishops and, you know, the situation right now. I know that there's so much pressure from the government right now. And I know priests are aching to, you know, be with their flocks again and to administer the sacraments and, you know, do what their lives were, oriented to do, essentially. So we need to support all those people in prayer, especially the church right now, because I think it's going to be a pretty interesting and difficult time, if and when things go back to whatever normal is after this. So obviously prayer.
Bless
That
you,
was a
Robert.
very COVID,
Thank you for that contribution.
Yeah.
right in, perfect example of how it's supposed to be done. Wash your hands.
He has hand sanitizer just out of view. You can't see it. It's over there. There you go.
But I mean, I guess, beyond that, so I will say one positive thing that's been happening since all of this has been going on, it's kind of part of what I was saying earlier. A lot of people, especially with all this Zoom software and, Slack threads and all of the social media, I mean, I've said a rosary with large groups of people, just about every single night since this whole thing's gone down. That's something that was never happening before, on the large scale. And, spiritually, you can't really deny, how efficacious that could be.
Yeah, so we just got off Zoom YAM Young Adult Ministry Rosary with St. Alphonsus, with the St. Alphonsus community, and we had over 20 people on that. So yeah, I mean, it definitely has brought people together. Obviously not physically, unfortunately, but you think about how many times like you'll walk into a parish for their rosary time or whatever, and you'll see maybe a handful of people there, and how many of those are young adults. Maybe it's the convenience factor that just being on Zoom allows us to have. Maybe we're millennials in that respect. I don't know. However, I think it also might just be an increased longing for a community, but B, realizing, as Zach said, prayer is efficacious. And as lay people, there's not a whole heck of a lot else we can do. Not, again, I know it's hard to talk about this in that way without sounding like you're diminishing the effect of prayer, but in no way am I doing that. And like I said, the other thing that me and the roommates have been doing is the liturgy of the hours. So that's a great way to partake in liturgy still. So I highly recommend, if anyone is wanting to partake in some psalms and some readings and whatnot, that is prayed across the universal church. That's a great thing to do, and I highly recommend it. The app that most of us use, it's called iBreviary. Go ahead and type that into your favorite app store, whatever that may be, and download that. Start praying the liturgy of the hours.
Yeah, nice.
I get royalties, by the way, so.
He's sponsored.
So is you, Reverie.
Use the code JTrainer36.
You'll get it for free if you
Yeah.
use my promo code.
Yeah,
You'll get
it's
it
the only
for
way.
Here's my promo code.
I think
Posted in the comments of the YouTube and the Facebook. My parish, St. Edward's, we're going to be live streaming for Holy Week. I think a Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday. We do morning prayer, evening prayer together, and we're gonna chant it. We're gonna live stream it. So if you've ever had trouble with the liturgy of the hours, chanting the divine office, we're gonna live stream it. You can watch us and kind of figure out, because it's kind of hard to follow. It's hard to learn. So that'll be available online.
Yeah, I mean, Evan's still half asleep through it every single time, so don't worry if you can't follow.
Hey, it's really early in the morning.
It's not really early in the morning.
It is. 6:45 is before even 7 o'clock, obviously.
Technically, you are correct. Yes, that is how time works.
Technically, you're right, Evan. All right. Does anybody have, I got more questions, so
I
guess just to jump
Fire
in.
away.
Sorry. So I think that this is I think because of all the resources that are out there right now that are, I think a lot of them are trying to teach people how to pray. If you don't come out of this with a renewed prayer life, you've wasted the most golden opportunity you've had in maybe your life. And that you should be taking at least 20 minutes. I would suggest more, but start with 20 per day of just praying, and praying with nothing. Doing it, I mean, you can do it in a quiet corner of your house, in a chair, your favorite chair. I don't care where it is, but this is the time. Like if you, the people who complain about not having a good, they don't really get Catholicism. They don't get religion. If you don't have a prayer life, then yeah, I totally get it. That makes perfect sense why you're complaining about your, religion, because you're not praying. There's so many good places that will teach you like how to pray. There's so many ways to do it, but 20 minutes a day of just sitting there with God in silence. If you're not doing that, then it's almost like all this other stuff we've been talking about. I don't even know how to. It's almost like I don't even know how to help or direct you further. It's so essential. It's so essential.
I saw an article a couple days ago that was talking about how the Google searches for prayer have like quadrupled or something in the last 2 weeks, which I think speaks very much to what people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, somebody said something recent. There was a research study done recently. Recent research. 1 in 5 people who claim to be atheists have started praying again as a result.
Hey, a good fruit.
Praise God.
That's a fruit.
Praise God. That is beautiful. That's a fruit. That's what we call a fruit, you guys.
Boom.
I feel like I need to use the whole square. Also, I don't know if they can see this on talk, but when you talk, if I'm making noise, it turns green, which is like so just, I don't know, just satisfying to me. It's very gratifying when I speak, it lights up. Okay, so
always got to be the center of attention, right, Kate? Always got to be the center of attention.
I try not to be. Okay.
Well, since Evan doesn't talk, somebody has to pick up the slack. So.
Evan, I know. It's all good. Okay. What was I going to say? What observations have you guys made of humanity in this pandemic?
Big question.
Ridiculous.
Toilet paper and everything, like consider it all. What are the mentionable observations of humanity that you've made?
Ninja masks everywhere.
Go deep. Yeah. Ninja masks.
People
Do
wearing
ninja
masks
masks have
in the
holes for
middle
the
of
mouths? 'Cause
wide
that
open
feels-
spaces. What's that?
I said, do ninja masks have holes for the mouth and nose? Because that feels like it defeats the purpose.
No. Total stealth,
okay.
silence.
All right, touche. All right.
You gotta muffle the
Continue your
breathing when you're a ninja. I mean, just basic ninja.
I have noticed living in the city, driving down the street, people like to walk their dogs in the middle of the street now for some reason.
Yeah.
Sidewalks must be contaminated, I guess.
Does that have something to do with the pandemic, or is that just people in Chicago?
No, it's so I for some reason get these emails. I don't know if when I first moved here, I signed up. I must have signed up for it. I mean, for some reason, obviously I signed up for it at some point, but this like Nextdoor. Do you guys know Nextdoor? It's like a neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
So it's like a neighborhood social media site. I've never once gone on it, but I get emails. And there was this post complaining about runners, people that are out exercising during this pandemic. And the post was saying, yeah, I know, Kevin, I know. That was my reaction too. But saying, if you're out running, please run in the middle of the street so that people walking on the sidewalk don't come into contact with you. So it must follow that same logic, Zach. Whatever logic it is, but
it has to. I know.
Oh gosh, man. I mean, like, I understand germ transmission, but I mean, absolute fear of any other human being, and then like I said earlier too, like everybody's got masks. I mean, great. That's what the CDC is recommending, but
Artie said in the chat that he saw someone wearing a Darth Vader mask.
Well, in our apartment, we
Which
were
is funny.
joking about using masks because it just said masks. I'm sure if I only read headlines, I don't read articles. So I'm sure if you went
Yeah.
to the article,
Yeah.
you would have actually, it would have specified what kind of mask. But
Like
we
a
were joking at
luchador.
our apartment, like a
Probably.
hockey mask, a catcher's mask, just wear a mask that are wide open in the front.
I mean, it's gonna be a hell of a lot easier to rob a bank right now. I tell you that. But I
Hey,
was gonna say,
my
too-
weekends are
Don't
free now. My
incriminate
weekends are
us.
free now. I don't have anything to do on Sundays, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Walking through the park and seeing people wearing masks, like in the
Tim,
middle of.
Kevin, Evan, someone make them stop.
Sorry.
Any
got
give
nothing.
us your deep thoughts on
I
observation.
mean, I've been
you made of
very
humanity during.
I've been very impressed by the creativity that has come out of this.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, just I probably made this joke on Slack, and I'll repeat it here because
I mean, it's the same exact.
might as well. It's just like I think you can make a you're gonna make yeah. I think
It's not the
you can
same
make
audience. Keep going.
you can make a whole. There's gonna be like whole wings and museums. It's like the content created from the great coronavirus pandemic of 2020, and it's just like the amount that's just coming at it, and even like when I was walking today, like there was a someone
Uh-oh.
10 jumping jacks and all here, and then hop on your foot 15 times here. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like it was a kid made it, so I'm like, it's kind of fun. So it's the creativity that people are coming up with. I mean, I think it's only going to last so long, and that if this is throughout the summer.
I mean, are these
then-
wings of museums gonna just be entirely memes? Is that like
I mean, there's some good memes out there. So like, you say like it's a bad thing. Like that sounds pretty good. Actually. I don't understand the question.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
I'd say
guys.
generally people have been pretty good. But
I think so. Yeah. I
we'll
think
see
so
how
too.
long this
I don't
lasts,
know.
because once
Going
the
back
weather
to,
gets really
like-
nice, there's no way.
going back to the question on like the humanity or whatever, what have we seen? It's really, of course, my first the first thing that hit me about how big of a deal this was March Madness being canceled, right? So sports in general just grinding to
National championship is tonight.
National championship would have been tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. RIP.
But the people got this instead.
Yeah, this is
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty self-confident, some might say arrogant fellow, but I will admit that this pales in comparison to March Madness. But however, from a humanity perspective, seeing what organizations have decided to step up and pay their workers through this process, what places have not. And just that kind of thing it's really interesting. I'm not going to pretend to know the economics of any of those decisions, but it was always heartwarming to read, Jerry Reinsdorf, the Chicago Bulls, decided like every single employee that wasn't going to be working, they were still going to pay their salaries. So stuff like that, really stands out.
Yeah.
And then I think communities have kind of
Amen.
come together as well in similar ways. You're seeing all the restaurants, specifically like the small business restaurants that are struggling, and places people are being creative in their ways to still support them, whether it's getting takeout or buying a gift card. I've seen that as a popular suggestion to buy a gift card now and then use it later. So that you can still support them during this time. So, that's the creativity I'm seeing, I guess, is in that respect.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, trying to draw conclusions about humanity relative to this virus, because it's limited so much of our exposure to humanity. So all we basically see is through mass media and through social media. So we're drawing conclusions based on what we've traditionally considered more artificial presentations of people. So it's interesting to sort of
Interesting.
speculate as to whether this will make people be more, I guess you could say, honest about how they're actually feeling or how they're actually living via social media, or whether we're still
Yeah.
seeing sort of people's
Mm.
superficial selves. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but just
I mean, everyone
the
always puts
veneer
their,
that you're able to see.
exactly. Everyone always puts their best self on. But that's a really good point,
Yeah.
and I think you do a good job talking. You should do that more. So.
He's putting his best self out there right now.
There it is.
Tim, I feel like a minute ago you opened your mouth and then someone else started talking, but were you going to say something?
Yeah, just from the church's perspective, that the virus and the lockdown and everything has kind of forced a lot of churches to go online. You know, something that, oh my gosh, it's 2020, and they're just finally like getting their Facebook pages going. And there's so many parishes that have a Facebook page just for the sake of saying like, oh, we're on social media. But now it's like they're kind of forced to do it. So it's kind of been like a kick in the butt a little bit for a lot of like organizations in the church. Like, oh no, we got to like really think outside the box and do something different and reach people in a different way. And people are priests. I'm just so surprised that they like found cameras and they're figuring it out and getting stuff out, getting content online. I'm like, man, good for you.
Yeah, not every parish has seminarians there to help with.
Not talking about my own.
I mean, I'm just but that's set up there. And
so my parish's online content is pretty good. So.
No, that's interesting though, because Kev, I think you and I had this conversation, and I said it to Father Ryan too, that I feel like now, and I believe in this, the more I think about it, I think it's true that this really separates the weak from the strong in terms of the priests who have been leaning with their people versus the priests who are actively engaging in relationship with their parishes. So I think, and you know, this is not meant to be a criticism of anyone specifically, so much as I think that it's just a truth of our times that you have pastors who have really leaned on the sacraments as, I'm doing my part because I'm doing Sunday Mass, I'm doing weddings, I'm doing funerals. And aside from that, I take my days off, I go do my thing, and I don't worry about the people in my parish. And if someone calls here, somebody else answers, and I avoid personal meetings and, you know, whatever. I think those priests are out there. And I think this has been such an opportunity for also for like the younger generations of priests to shine. Like there's so many young priors who are just like freaking killing it on social media. Like Father Max Bena, he is killing it all the time. And I love it. I love it. And so it's like, I don't know if he follows me on some social media. I don't know if he'd be on here, but like, I love that. And so I feel like that's really calling priests to task in terms of you have to start engaging in relationship, and you can't just use the sacraments to make it appear as though you're doing your job. You know what I mean? And when I say your job, I mean living the fullness of your vocation by engaging.
And hopefully that the laity sees that they're using this opportunity to see that priests are more than just sacrament dispensers. Sometimes the priests and we there's so much, like I said, put out there that and different stuff and interesting stuff. Maybe priests exposing. I think Father Steve here at St. Alphonsus like did a great job. He did a live stream adoration, and he was just praying like, for intentions out loud, and it was really
that
cool
was
to watch.
so cool.
Like here's how you pray for people out loud. Here's like he's showing you like all these different ways, and it's not just, you know, he's there for to say Mass and give communion and be there for confession and anointing the sick. All very important things and are necessary, and priests are the only ones who can do those things. But priests can and are and should be so much more. And the laity should honestly demand that their priests are more than just that, and expect them to be more than just that, and look to them for more than just that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, Kevin. Like, as much as you know, Mary Kate's mentioning there are some priests that kind of have that mindset, but I think it's key for most of us to recognize the humanity of our priests. They're people too. I don't know who mentioned it earlier, but the fact that they're missing their flock, like saying mass to an empty church has to be disheartening to them. I can't begin to imagine what
Yeah.
that's like. So
It's really weird.
yeah, I believe
Not that
it.
I'm saying mass. I'm not saying mass, but seeing it happen it's a bizarre. It's a kind of a bizarre experience. I think Tim I don't know if Tim could say the same. It's like you really are missing something. Like it's a very clear picture of why we all gather together on Sunday and not just go whenever we want.
Well,
That was
thinking
one of the
from it.
readers.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was one of the readers for the Palm Sunday liturgy, and there are a couple people that we let in, but for the most part, it's just totally sparse. It's the most awkward thing ever. But online, I mean, we did what we could, and ended up being really good.
I was going to say, this is a pretty cool opportunity. Also, well, I mean, it's cool in one regards because you can see from our perspectives, you guys, the seminarians are living with other seminarians. You're not alone, and you're keeping the priests there company too, who would otherwise, I know at St. Edward, he's not alone, but Father Steve's all alone at St. Alphonsus right now. Huge parish. So, and
Amen.
it's a good time to think about all the priests who are like totally cut off from everybody now and don't have anybody staying with them. But it's also to that point, it's a pretty interesting time to look at, you guys, the seminarians probably would be able to tell me, what are the groups where priests are banding together, like diocesan priests, but they're living together too, so that they're more disciplined in formation, keeping each other accountable,
Companions of Christ.
Yeah, companions in Christ. I mean, this is a fantastic time for something
Joliet's
like
about
that to
started
start.
actually. They're starting it now.
Really?
Yeah.
Here in,
Yeah, my
in
father
Chicago?
actually, Father, the affirmation Father Max Spana, they're just about to get approved, or they already just got approved by the bishop. There's 4 of them right now.
Awesome.
They exist in Denver and St. Paul also.
Okay. So what diocese is that going to be in? Is that Joliet, Max Bana?
Joliet.
Father Bana? Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. I mean, that's kind of something I feel like is going to help,
Joliet Diocese.
keep priests sharp.
You're leaving the Joliet Diocese, Mary Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say,
Yeah, I
like one
am.
of
I'm
the
leaving.
biggest.
But I'll always be back. No, Tim, go.
No, one of the biggest fruits I've had is just the community life here. It's one of those things when, like I was saying, Father Carchi told us, hey, we're moving off-site. You guys have to either go home or find a parish to go to. It was one of the first thoughts I had. Is like, man, I could go. My aunt and uncle are out in Arizona, and they have a place out in Geneva, and I could just be there all by myself. But like, man, spiritually, that would be a train wreck. And so me and a couple friends just got together, my classmates, and they're like, oh, let's live in community together and let's like intentionally kind of do this community thing.
Yeah.
And it has been so good. I don't even know how to like quantify or to describe it. And it's one of those things that like John's talking about living in community with guys from St. Al. It's like there's something to it, and it is like so spiritually uplifting to have guys who care about increasing their prayer life and living out the faith and like growing with each other. And it's been so good.
Totally. It has made me have to actually think about community, which I feel like is something we don't typically have to think about.
Mhm.
I'm in Joliet, I'm with my parents right now in their house. And so I'm not seeing friends on a regular basis anymore. I'm not seeing even my coworkers. Literally, I'm seeing my parents. And it's like, it's been one of those things that it goes back to that longing, and how it like creates this longing, which I think is so good. I was just talking to Dan about longing last night, actually. Like, longing is so fruitful and so good. And like when we like are able to really experience that longing and enter into it and actually like have to think about it, it changes the way we receive it, and it's painful, but it's also something that we can use to glorify God. And so like this whole experience of having to seek out community and opportunities like this, and in, like Zoom rosaries that I've done with Yam and with, other groups of friends. It's like a different level of community that you have to actually enter into very purposely. Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's beautiful. Do you guys, so another question that I wanted to ask you guys that I think is critical. So many conspiracy theories right now. Are you guys conspiracy theorists? We made that joke in the beginning, but I don't know if we were actually live, if people could hear us or not. But like, this is something that was really hard for me in the beginning. I joke about being a conspiracy theorist. I'm actually not. I actually just really put so much stock in truth. And the way that I like cope with things is I ask questions and I seek answers. Like that's just how I cope. And so in the beginning, when all of this started, it was very, very, very hard to discern fact from fiction and to know what was true and what was not. And I think with time, things are getting a little bit easier because there's getting to be more of a consensus about information, but it's still a struggle. And there's all this like stuff on the internet right now about like these varying conspiracy theories that I think, especially as Catholics, are very attractive to us because it assigns some like a good and an evil to what's going on in the world, as opposed to just a bunch of like ambiguous players, and we don't really know where they stand, and we don't really know who they are, and we don't really know like how they all fit together. So how do you guys personally deal with that? Like how do you discern fact from fiction? And how do you like know what to put stock in and know what to buy into and know what not to? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, so I think I personally, I want to make the point that it's always good to ask questions and not to just, take what you read as fact. As we've seen with the, data coming out of China, that how off that has been and whatnot. I don't know. My answer is really boring, so that's why I wanted to get out of the way first. Answer to this whole thing is that there are a lot of people smarter than me who are in charge, and CDC says something, the WHO says something. I'll read it critically, but if it's not obviously weird to me, I'll go with it. They're smarter than me. They know what they're talking about. So,
yeah, I think you put your finger on the crux of the matter right there, and maybe even a little more deeply. That what the CDC new guidelines and such, that's important for us to pay attention to. Like, oh, the CDC says you should wear a mask outside. Okay, that's something that we need to actually take stock of. But before we even ask whether some statement about China is true or not, I think we should also ask ourselves, like, does it matter for me whether that statement is true or not? And is it worth me investing my time in sort of either attempting to do some online detection or even just ponder it myself? Is there, and the answer may be yes, but I think we should ask ourselves, is there really benefit in knowing like, oh, did China falsify the data? Did China not falsify the data? Like that's a relevant question for some people, but for me, as like an ordinary American citizen who's not going to be making decisions about how we as a country relate to China, it might not be that important. And I think what people definitely have a hard time with, or at least what I definitely have a hard time with, is this kind of, I can learn all this information about this virus and it's not going to change a thing. So I think that's an interesting thing to consider.
Amen.
Isaac.
I think that's
I think
I mean,
we all know who's going to be the spicy take haver on this one. So.
No, but Evan, I totally I appreciate that you said that, because I think that we, like, I know for me personally, I like grasp at information, and there are just quite simply some answers that we don't need to know, or that like there's just some information that doesn't belong to us. And like I can make informed choices about what's in my immediate realm of information, or like immediate realm of knowledge. But like trying to go beyond that, I don't know, like to what extent are we just engaging curiosity, which is not necessarily a virtuous thing, which is not a virtuous thing.
No.
Well, it can be.
Balance. Okay, depending upon, well, I don't know. How do you discern that? Like, how do you discern what's virtuous? Like, where is it good to engage curiosity, and then where is the line? You know,
Yeah, I think we're
like
getting into it kind of
when are you like taking it too far, grasping an information that you're like, I can never really know what's true. So is it worthwhile? You know, go
I
ahead,
think we're
John.
getting into a question of prudence here, you know, like, right, like, so one of the conspiracy theories out there, right, is that this is it was a biological warfare weapon developed by China that got leaked to the surrounding population and spread from there, right? And then there's also, I don't know the state of this one, whether it's a conspiracy theory or if it actually holds merit. I actually really don't know. But there's the pictures of people eating bat soup, right? And that we do know that bats carry coronavirus. Like that is something that is known. Coronavirus is, right. So this is COVID-19. So there are 18 other coronaviruses out there, somewhat related, but obviously none of those have caused the pandemic that we're experiencing now. But the prudential question that I ask myself, and it gets at what Evan was saying, is that, no matter how it originated, is that going to change my individual and even societal response to things,
Right.
like even in my family or my friend group or whatever, if it originated one way or another, not going to change how I respond to it. It's still, the virus is the same. So how I, combat the virus is going to be the same regardless of how it actually originated. So in that sense,
Right.
it's not prudential for me to delve in too deep.
Yeah. And I think part of the allure of getting into all of that other stuff too, because, I'll freely admit, I love to get into all that stuff. I love it.
Me too.
Marty just sit here back and forth all the time. It's, ridiculous. But, part of the allure of getting into that is because, none of us have ever lived through anything like this before. Our parents haven't, our grandparents didn't, and so anytime, whether it is or isn't, like anytime legislation is passed that keeps everybody inside, or anytime, the church shuts down like on moment's notice and we don't have anything anymore. Anytime anything extreme like that happens, you're always kind of looking for a finger, or looking for something to point a finger of blame towards, or it's like what you said, Mary Kate, having the black and white definition really assists, in just making sense of it all. And so obviously you see it all around the world, people come up with their theories and all sorts of stuff for where the Chinese virus came from. But, it's, it can sink you pretty fast, and if you just get so engrossed in it that it changes your worldview and makes you a super negative person, that's one thing, I feel like if you can engage it without being super cynical.
And that's the thing, that's one of the things that I really struggle with is like in my line of work, working in the pro-life movement, over the last 2 years, I continue to do research on stuff and I see the capacity for evil that exists in the world. And I see how there are things happening that people wouldn't believe if I told them to their face.
Yeah.
And so then there's like, okay, we'll use the Gates Foundation as an example because they're my like soapbox example, but the Gates Foundation is doing so much evil. So much of what they do is, I know you guys are laughing at me. So much of what they do is focused on this notion of natural. I almost said of natural family planning, of like family planning and of health, reproductive health care, and we don't. What? I missed that. You guys are getting kind of. I getting
population control? That's one of their.
Yeah, you said it, not me. Population control, exactly.
What's wrong with that?
So that's
they freely admit that that's one of their things.
100%, they freely admit it. But that's where I struggle with stuff like this: is that you've got these theories about coronavirus out there right now that are like, it's a tactic of population control. They're trying to force vaccines on people, yada, 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 all these things. And it's like, I only know what I know. And there's information out there that I can speculate, and I can read rumors, but like at the end of the day, and that's where I get sucked in, is like, there's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth that the population control community and the New World Order community wants to do X, Y, and Z. You know, they want to do all these things, and they're using all of those things as an opportunity to do that. But on the other hand, I only know what I know. I can only verify what I can verify. And what are the things that are immediately touching me in this moment? Immediately in this moment, I have to live my day to day in the most fruitful way that I can. And like, I've really had to just like let some of that stuff go.
Yeah.
And that's hard for me because I like seek that truth out. Like, I want to know what the truth is. I don't know, now I'm just like soapboxing about truth, but that's this topic has been one of my primary struggles with this whole thing.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I can identify with that. It sucks you in so much that you just, I don't know, sometimes I'm not even sure if truth is necessarily, you know, what you end up looking for. You're just looking for, you know, you're just looking for that black and white to, you know, exist so that you can feel comfortable knowing that you're on one side or not, you know. But
And that could
it
very well be it.
Kind of goes almost to the problem of evil, right? Like, and maybe that's where some Catholics might get sucked into something of this nature, that you know, searching for the conspiracy theory or what have you, because you know, as Catholics, we believe that God does permissively allow bad things to happen. I mean, obviously, his permissive will allows everything that happens to happen. So that's not comforting news to hear, that, okay, this pandemic, that natural disaster, this atrocity, not actively willed by God, but permissively willed by God. Like, we obviously believe in an omnipotent creator. So I think that's where, if we can blame it on a specific evil, if we can blame it on these bad guys, it's easier to stomach and easier to deal with.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing is a
Poor Kev.
Oh,
We want to hear.
My video froze, so I couldn't hear.
We
all the
want to
laughter
hear what
that
you're
got.
saying so bad.
Did it freeze?
you just repeat the stuff where you said the part about the
Yeah, it
things.
froze. Try again.
Oh, I would say the whole thing is a complete cover up for the fact that Carol Baskin killed her husband. So
That's what you said?
Amen.
yeah.
I thought you were saying this like profound thing.
Oh,
No, that never
fine,
happened.
I don't want to hear it then. Take it back.
Is that for real what you said?
That is actually what I said, and it froze. I'm like, oh man, well, I'm sure everyone's laughing right now. It was super hilarious. So I'm sure it's just.
Because it was such a
I'm
I'm
funny
sure everyone's
joke.
laughing at my hilarious joke.
Yeah, that's what I got. It just froze. I'm like, well, I guess it went through.
Tiger King was the reason for the Wu flu.
You guys.
All
All right. I'm going to scroll through the chat.
Is totally.
And we can go to some of these questions in the chat. If anybody has
we're also
thoughts.
running a little bit, so maybe like one or two questions.
All right. People are texting me. It's so good. Okay. Tim, Evan, if you have nothing to add to that beautiful, Kevin, you just like.
I think he summed everything up right there.
There's a great meme floating around there with somebody whispering into Trump's ear, and it says, "Trump, the coronavirus stuff is getting so bad. What are we going to do?" And he says, "Release the Tiger documentary." That's my contribution.
Oh my gosh. I can't. Okay.
Are we getting into the verbally describing memes portion of the segment? Because
Someone call Dan.
So many memes to verbally describe.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's
This is the part. This is the part where we start just talking about all the memes we've seen. Oh my gosh.
Fire.
Okay.
They've been fire. I'm
Um,
impressed.
Marty is just like blowing up this chat.
I'd
you
expect nothing. I'd expect
you-
nothing
Okay.
less.
We're gonna
can
do
you boot
questions.
him from the chat?
Somebody just asked you and me, Kevin, who
boot.
killed
I thought you
Epstein?
said boo him.
Boo,
Boo
boo
him.
and boot both. Do 'em
Can you
both.
guys see the chat? This
I'm
chat's
not on-
pretty
I'm not
funny,
on the
actually.
YouTube. I'm not on the YouTube.
I'm gonna read some of the comments and then we'll do the questions, okay? All right, Ephraim says, is Tim in a recording studio?
Yes,
Tim, I
Ephraim.
love it.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know if y'all caught it. My camera
Marty
died
called
partway
all of us
through.
studs, which is weird. Oh, whatever. It looks great. It looks great. Everyone's saying men's group plus Mary Kate.
Well,
pretty much.
Pretty much. That's pretty much it, I guess. Talking about whiskey. Father
Good.
Nathan. Yes,
Good.
Father Nathan. Okay. Do you think, hard-hitting question, do you think God is punishing us?
oof.
Similar to how he set a plague on the Israelites for the sin of King David.
You want my spicy take? I'll say yes. Done.
I
mean,
know
why not?
what you think, Zach.
I think it's a more interesting
Okay, you guys,
question.
let's go there.
I think it's a more
Why?
interesting question to ask.
Tell us why you think that.
Okay, I'll say, like I'm saying, I think it's a more interesting question to ask. Yeah, I've heard several people, bring that concept up, and immediately you're shut down, for saying like, oh, that's ridiculous, it's preposterous, Old Testament God, this, that, and the other thing. Trust me, like, I don't like thinking about that sort of thing either. I would just say, just like John was saying, everything that happens is within God's permissive will, right? It's either his preferred or permissive will. Nothing exists in creation without his willing it. And so I would never say that I know why this is happening. It was a strong yes in the beginning, obviously, but I would also kind of backtrack a little bit by making that clear.
No, I'm not sure.
I will say, I've heard some really interesting theories about, or not even theories, just drawing connections between the fact that we had pagan worship in the Vatican not a few months ago. I mean, legitimately, we did, right? And now we've got this sort of stuff going on, and Italy was the hardest hit, apart from China, which we know nothing about. But so why not? Why is that not a plausible theory? Especially if, in every modern Marian apparition, and actually every church approved Marian apparition for the most part, she's always spoken about chastisement if man doesn't change their ways, right? I personally don't see why it's a ridiculous thing to even question whether or not that could be the case. I'm not sitting here saying it's for this, it happened because of this or that. I don't know, but why not? The state of humanity is pretty darn bad right now. I don't think anybody can deny that. The state of the church is
I
pretty
agree.
darn bad. There's
Well,
a lot of
has
good
there
things
has there
happening.
ever been a time in history when we couldn't say the state of humanity is bad or the state of the church is bad?
No,
I think
certainly.
we have certain issues that are sort of exploding and are much worse than in other times throughout history. But conversely, we probably have a lot of things that we're doing much better than in other time periods throughout history.
I don't know is that true? What are we doing better now than what we've been doing? I don't necessarily disagree with your point, Evan, but I also feel like things are really bad, like really bad. This is the bloodiest century? Yeah.
Yeah, the 20th century.
I'm sorry, the 20th century
The-
was
the-
the
the
bloodiest
20th century,
century
sure.
in world history. So I feel like that should tell us something about where we're at as a culture. And I think in the last 20 years, since 2000, things have only gotten worse. So, I mean, maybe that's true. What do you think? What do you think we're doing better?
So I
there
certainly
is
think
anything.
that our understanding of freedom, of equality, and of all the,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'm going to call them enlightenment virtues, although I suppose that's a controversial term
Yeah, it is.
in at least this group. But I think
Just have
that
this
our understanding of
conversation.
that, we're just exporting this conversation directly from Slack
I'm
to
just gonna read what we all
We're
said.
reading
to the video
transcripts
chat.
right now. Actually, this is
Right.
I'll
we're
post the
adding the
transcript
ums and
later.
the ahs just to make it seem like this
It
is
only
live,
took us
but-
2 hours to get into this. Let's go. Let's go.
No, I know. You guys, we gotta go a third hour. We have to. We don't have a choice. Evan, finish your thought. Evan, I
Yeah.
want to know what you're gonna say.
Well, I do think that our exploration of these enlightenment ideas has had some good fruits, and we see this both in physical scientific advances as well as in the political situation is very much better for a lot of groups of people that were, I guess you could say, underrepresented or oppressed throughout history, and the Enlightenment has had that positive effect. So I think while we can say yes, the time that we're living in certainly does some things very much worse than other periods of history, most notably abortion, I think it also does some things very much better than other time periods of history.
Yeah. I mean, there's a grain of salt with that for sure. Like, of course, I mean, I would certainly agree, when it comes to equality and, civil rights, things like that, a lot of that, I mean, very clearly, couldn't argue that whatsoever. Definitely good in that arena. But I guess I just mean, like, you look at the state of the church right now. I mean, the sex abuse crisis is like, I mean, honestly, we've really only flaked the top layer off of that, because there's only been a couple major reports come out of the US. I mean, that was a worldwide thing. We could spend forever just talking about that. But I mean, just looking at what's been going on in the Vatican and how there's so little like clear information about anything anymore. I mean,
it's difficult to compare aspect with any other time period because we
right. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is true. I mean, it's always easy to say every generation has said, like, not saying the end of the world is now, but every generation has said that this is the end, their generation is the worst that's been, or blah, 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 whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, I think getting back like Zach's original point after his strong yes, which I respect, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. I appreciate that. But no, his point afterwards about how, people tend to just dismiss the idea that it could be God punishing us. I think it's a worthwhile question to explore and to pray about. Again, we're, unless we get some divine revelation, we won't know. So I guess for me, maybe that question falls into the same one we were talking about just a little bit ago with origins of the coronavirus. And could this potentially be God's punishment on us? Yes. Am I going to return to prayer and fasting, strongly, regardless, if it, I get to heaven and God willing, and I find out that, no, this wasn't God's punishment on us. Am I going to regret the, increased prayer and increased fasting I've done? No. So I feel like that's the rational response, is to pray as if it was, and fast and all that. But that's just
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point. Is would we or should we act any differently if it was versus if it weren't, and would it be advantageous for us to just assume that it is, divine retribution or something, even if it's not? Because if we assume it's divine retribution, then we'll pray more, we'll get our lives in shape more, and those are both good things. Are there any negatives to viewing it that way, even if we are like almost completely convinced, as I happen to be, that this is not remotely divine retribution?
Tim and Kevin, I want to know what you guys think about all of these things.
I mean, I
Kev.
I have a tough time putting anything. I'm sorry. It's
No, it's
Dan
good.
Karenchin sucking up all the
It's
bandwidth
better.
watching us right now.
I know. I know. He texted me.
I tried to do it to wire in before it started, and it needed anyway. We'll fix it for
It's
next
good.
time. This is
Use
what happened next
yeah.
time.
Say your thing. Say what you're gonna say.
Okay, I'm gonna say this, and hopefully it doesn't freeze. I have a tough time, like as attributing anything to divine retribution, even though I know the
Okay.
Bible's kind of full of it. Not full of it, as in like Bible's full of it. Like the Bible is full of God punishing. And the Bible's really full of it, you know. But like I'm doing a class right now where we're doing a pretty deep read through of Jeremiah, and that's like pretty much Jeremiah saying like, you guys screwed up the covenant, and I'm going to punish you for a set of period of time, and this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's going to be pretty extreme. It's going to end. It's not going to be forever. And so when you read that, you're like, well, you know, is it? Because we went through this last year. Last year, like around this time, like almost exactly around this time, Notre Dame caught on fire, and everyone was saying, "Oh, that's divine retribution right there. Like that's God striking down His temple for the crimes of maybe France or all of us all." And it was so easy to pick off then, but it was actually Marty who I think even said like, "Well, you know, the temple, you know, was destroyed, and so, you know, is it so wrong to think that this is something similar?" So I'm definitely not throwing it. I'm not like totally eliminating. Sort of. I just have like a tough time. Maybe that says something about my image of God of saying that divine retribution is a thing. But I can rule it. But I would have a tough time.
We were so close.
Punishing more the crimes of the 21st century.
Yeah.
Oh well. That was the internet saying like, okay, stop talking.
Kev, that was great. We got through we got through almost the whole thing. That was perfect.
Right. It'll be fixed for next time. I will promise it'll be fixed for next time.
I mean,
This was you guys, I screwed up the first 15 minutes of this stream. It's all good. We're good. We're just gonna go for a third hour. It's fine. Everyone's welcome to stay. Tim, wait, what do you have something to say?
Not a lot. I'm kind of like scatterbrained all over with kind of the issue because I can kind of see it given some of the Marian apparitions. I can absolutely see Zach's point about that. But like part of me constantly wants to draw like almost a positivist kind of view of it. It's like, okay, well, if we're getting retribution from what specifically? And it's like the sex abuse. Like, well, what specifically in the sex abuse? Because that is just a minority of priests. I mean, it's been allowed across the board, especially with the cover up, but like that's not most priests either. So it's like, well, and also kind of like delineating what is that like tipping point at which God says, okay, let's give them a virus. You know, it's like it's hard for me to get on board with it, you know, without kind of like a more specific kind of talk. Like we did this, God is responding with this, and you know, we need to respond with this. You know, it's like I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm not against it.
I guess, I mean, like, it's like I don't know if I prefaced it this way, but I think it's more difficult to speak about that subject whenever there's any sort of implication that any one thing is to blame for it, because clearly there's no way on earth that I would have any knowledge of that. I'm just saying, from my point of view, at least, I think it's better to question why could it not be, you know, because we seem to collectively as a society, and I mean, not even as a society, but within the church, there seems to be like a definite lack of, among some people I've known, there's like this lack of desire to, you know, accept the fact that, I mean, we've been asked many times to like clean up our act, and in a lot of ways it hasn't happened, you know? And so what makes us immune to this, especially if people all throughout history, you know, have always within the church responded to these types of events as though they were punishment, whether they were or not, you know? And obviously we have a far more advanced understanding of scientific things these days too. But I believe that that is a more faithful response in general than just 100% lumping it into a biological aberration that, you know, God's just kind of like up in heaven, like, you know,
So
like,
I guess my thought about it is like, none of the, okay, I'm not trying to spew heresy here, so someone correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But God isn't initiating any evil in the world. The only evil that exists in the world is what he allows. So the devil is trying to do X, Y, and Z all the time. And the question becomes either does God allow it or does he not allow it? And in the cases of Notre Dame, you know, burning, or coronavirus, or swine flu, or 9/11, God allowed those evils.
or Tiger
So
King.
I feel like we should be prompted. Also, an evil that God has allowed in our world. Tiger King. Sorry, guys. You could literally do anything else with your time. Literally anything.
I agree with Mary Kate. Yeah.
I don't know if Dan's actually actively watching, but Dan texted me and said, "Tell Kevin I'm streaming Tiger King on all 10 of my devices."
Good. I told him he should. It's the most beautiful train wreck.
Continue what you were saying, Mary Kay.
Anyway, my point. What?
Continue what you were saying.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, my comment is just that, okay, God is not sitting up in heaven thinking about all the ways he can punish us for our sins. That's not
Right.
who he is. Now, he does allow stuff so as to make us holy. So if it's true that we're seeing things on, like, you know, these articles that we've seen, that people out there are Googling how to pray, and that, you know, 1 in 5 atheists are now praying because they're so afraid of the coronavirus, who's to say God isn't just trying to invoke these fruits from humanity because he wants to save all of us, and this is how he has to do it for some people.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing, you know, tacking onto that, obviously, it's always, you know, you think of, obviously, it's an Old Testament example, but Jonah and Nineveh, you know, it was a call to repentance and conversion. It's not just a call to repentance with a dead end, you know. And lest anybody think that I'm implying this, I'm not implying that, you know, grandma down the street in Chicago died from coronavirus because God was angry at her. Like, I'm not saying that, you know, clearly that's not how those things would work anyway. It's all beyond my pay grade, clearly. But again, I just think it's an interesting question to ask, you know.
What is your pay grade? How much is the church paying you? Because I want to compare it to that.
It's in the negative, I'll tell you that. The graces,
Good.
though, you can't put a number on grace.
Of course.
I think that's a good point. It's a juxtaposition, because originally we were talking about, does God punish us? But clearly we're not talking about God just being like, screw you, I'm giving you this. We're talking about he's allowing something in order for us to build in grace. That I could get behind, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is Dan Cranchman in the
100%.
area?
Is
Kevin
Dan
Gregus?
to come and sit down next to you? You should make him.
He did just deliver my laptop charger, but he went back upstairs.
Oh.
So
Wow.
he's camera shy, you
Anyways,
guys.
Tim, finish your thought. Did you finish your thought? Finish your thought.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought John interrupted him. Sorry.
That's very
Typical.
fair. I interrupt a lot.
Typical. Anti-turtle for that one.
All right. Any other thoughts about this? Should we go to the next question? Telling you guys, I'm not afraid to go to 11, so I'm just saying.
Well, Kevin has his laptop charger now, so he's in
Kevin.
for the long haul.
Yeah. Kevin O'Malley commented, the KG cam has more auto tune than T-Paved.
Oh man, dude. I bet.
That's
Play with
good.
the line of the night, of course.
Woo. Yeah, it has to come from him. You know it does.
Kevin wins.
We have another question.
You guys there? What's happening? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah, I'm going to the next question.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So it works.
Ephraim said, I wonder if theology of the body plays into this. If our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, do we have an obligation to protect them by taking measures like quarantining?
An obligation.
So I don't know theology of the body, but regarding our physical health, right?
You're
Like,
the perfect person to answer this question, John.
well, but I'm answering the second part of it because I don't know. I mean, maybe some of you guys can touch on how theology of the body would, impact this line of reasoning at all. But if we are called to respect and take care of our physical bodies. So I could see for sure a spirit kind of a spiritual aspect to taking care of ourselves and because of what we know about virology, taking care of others. I think that's what the biggest thing for the quarantine, right, is taking care of others that might not be as well off if they get the virus as we as young, healthy people, won't be too terribly affected, but yeah.
So Ephraim, whoever you are, if you're out there, stay quarantined.
Whoever you.
You're gonna see like a shoe flying from us.
I can't hear you guys. This chat just got so weird. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add?
I do know that depending,
Someone who knows something about theology of the body.
I was speaking pretty highly about my roommates earlier, but there are some times when I do believe that it's got to be divine punishment, having to be quarantined in.
For some people, yeah.
For some people, probably them.
Probably them.
So do we have any theology of the body
experts in this group?
Yeah.
Do we have any experts on anything here?
Well, that's a very good question.
I haven't seen
I don't know that I think that this is specifically a theology of the body thing. I think in general we're called to take care of our bodies.
Right.
Where I struggle with all of this stuff with the church is that we're also called to trust God to like an insurmountable degree. And like if a person has cancer, you don't just trust God to cure you. You trust God to cure you, but you don't just trust God to cure you. You also, take the medicine.
Right.
Like I have a chronic thyroid issue. I take my medicine every day. I don't just trust that God is going to like sustain my life.
Yeah.
So I think it's a balance. When it's something like this that's so far outside of our control, we have to do what we can control. We can control whether or not we go out in public for X amount of weeks. Can't control if when I do happen to be out in public because I have to go to my office to pay my employees or something else. We can't control, I can't control coming in contact with the virus on that commute. But I'm doing what I can in the meantime. I don't know. That's my perspective on that.
I just want to say high five, thyroid problems.
Hey,
Gang.
did my blood work this morning. Yep. You know it.
You did your own blood work?
No.
Oh.
I got it done. I'm sorry. I got it done.
Okay.
All right. Should I go to the next question?
Yeah.
I was just going to
This is
add,
the part
I'm trying to pull it up right now, but I can't remember where it is.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Aquinas talks and he says something to the effect of that supernatural graces come into effect are supplied whenever natural grace is like does not supply, right?
Mhm.
So I can't remember where I was going with that.
Yeah.
But it's like
okay.
you
what would
don't
be the
just like
implication of
expect
that?
God to like, oh God, it's gonna save me. But when you have like the natural means to do so, it's like you're expected to follow through the natural graces.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense
That
to
makes
me, right?
sense.
Like we're not supposed to just like there's the lady, I don't know where, but it was this big news story that she was like going to church or something, trying to violate the stay-at-home order, and her reasoning was she was covered in the blood of Christ, so she was going to be fine.
Got it.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be
Have you
idiots.
guys seen that meme?
Which one?
Oh wait,
I've seen them
I'm
all.
gonna try to
so
find it.
Go on.
Dan is like desperately trying to comment in the comments, and it's marking him as spam. No, but that's not what I was gonna say.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
meme. Hold on, Father Ryan commented on here too. I don't know if he's still on, but he posted this meme, and it's wait 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. This is the now we're entering into the memes portion of the evening. So this meme is Jesus, and it's like Jesus calling this woman, and he's like, Jesus, it's Karen. I'm not going to show you. Never mind. Forget it.
Oh, please do. It's a good one.
Do you know it?
Oh yeah, I've seen them all.
No, it's literally like, Karen, it's Jesus. Listen, hold on. I'm not going to try to guess it.
I actually prefer Mary Kate's interpretation.
It wasn't a Karen. It's a Debbie. It's not a Karen. It's a Debbie. Hey, Debbie, it's me, the Lord. Listen, you need to stop telling Facebook that your health is in my hands. You're going to have to wash your hands in quarantine like everyone else, okay? There have been some great memes, some truly good memes.
My favorite example of that, what is that? What do they call those guys? The snake preachers? They hold the snakes, they take.
Psalm 91, I think, yeah.
Yeah, the guys they hold rattlesnakes and have like their
Biblical. Baptist
services, and so like the snakes won't bite them, and like they get bit and they die.
Yeah, didn't have enough faith.
Yeah, not enough faith.
It's not funny. We shouldn't laugh.
Well, the
We can kind of laugh. I'm kind of laughing.
Yeah, I mean,
you little faith. Okay, what else? David asked, he said he's curious about how you guys are thinking about going into the Easter season after the fast that's been imposed upon us.
Yeah, it's a tough one because in a way, we know that this fast will continue at least through the end of April, right? This kind of imposed fast. So, I mean, yeah, it's not something I've thought about enough, I guess, because we have to find a way to celebrate the Easter season still. Living liturgically, the liturgical calendar doesn't care if there's a pandemic or not. So, whatever it was, like chocolate, not hitting your snooze button, all those things, maybe, make sure you go back to enjoying yourself, enjoy life as much as you can. But I don't know if there's really any way we can overcome what has been imposed on us by the world.
Somebody asked that in one of these other groups I'm in. There's some really good resources out there for kind of getting back to the roots and looking at like the traditional Holy Week schedule. And there's so many things that go along with that. Like, there's traditional recipes that people always cook during Holy Week, looking at, I think today's Monday, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's Tenebrae, I think. Like the old school Tenebrae service during Holy Week is absolutely beautiful. This is a really good time, especially now since we have the luxury of, for this time being, of being able to check out a lot of different masses and services. I mean, you could check out, a traditional Latin Tridentine, a traditional Latin mass, like, for Tenebrae tomorrow, or you could do like a Byzantine Catholic, service on Wednesday. I mean, just learning the tradition behind each and every day in Holy Week, because each day has its own, I guess, character, if you will. Spy Wednesday. You never hear about Spy Wednesday. That's pretty cool in the tradition of the church. The night that Judas gave Jesus up, and lots of cool stuff there. So I mean, there's a lot of digging you can do during this time now that everybody's kind of isolated at home, and really, keep the tradition alive. That would be my suggestion.
I mentioned this whole notion of longing before, and that's something I've been thinking a lot about. And I think that that is sort of at the heart of fasting in a certain sense, that we deprive ourselves of something, or we like renounce something in anticipation of what's to come.
Mhm.
And I think that when we're talking about like looking at quarantine as a fast, and like really allowing ourselves to enter into that longing, I feel like it brings a whole new meaning to the season. Because then Easter is that celebration, and granted, we won't have public mass on Easter necessarily, but eventually we will have public mass again. And I was just saying to some friends the other day, like, I can't freaking wait to be back in mass with, like, I can't wait. I am going to weep tears of joy when we are back in mass. It's going to be the best mass of my life.
Mhm.
So like that is so cool. And that is exactly what Easter is all about. Like that is literally the heart of Easter, is like the return of the Lord. That is the heart of Easter right there. So if we are able to like take that and like enter into it and apply it to the season, I feel like, dang, I'm all about that. That is like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
That
I
is
think
it.
the tough part of that question, that I'm open to hearing any suggestions is, how do we live specifically the Easter season, while having this self-imposed penance still, or not self-imposed, sorry, but this unchosen penance that we are still suffering from. It's gonna make it hard for me to live the Easter season and be as joyous as I should be.
Mhm.
It might also serve us in the future. It might not just be like a current thing for us, that in future Easter seasons we might look back to this time and
Mhm.
say, yeah, there was this time when I was several years ago where it was Easter, but like it wasn't. I mean, yeah, liturgically it was, but I was separated from everybody else. I wasn't having the typical Easter feasts that I would. And the privation of that might actually serve us to remember the goodness, from having the privation of it. What am I getting at? Going back to Augustine, is like, why is this like allowed? Why is evil allowed? Is for us a response in prayer. Going back to Mary Kate's kind of response, like that's beautiful, like that's amazing, that's incredible. That if we don't respond in prayer, in gratitude to God, then like we're missing the whole point of even its opportunity to be like isolated in the Easter season. I think it's going to be good for us going forward in the future.
Amen.
Mary Kay, what you were saying about longing reminds me a lot of the Psalm, Psalm 42. I have it open here. I'll read just the first 3 lines. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My thirst for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with God? My tears have been my food day and night, while men say to me all day long, where is your God? And there's this kind of throughout the psalm, there's this kind of, it talks about longing for God the way, I mean, the very opening imagery is the way an animal without water longs for that.
Yeah, why you cast down my soul? Why groan within me? Hope in God I will praise him still. My Savior and my God, I think it's how it goes. But like that whole idea of, it's a great psalm. It's actually the one that was prayed this morning.
It was. That's what I was just about to say.
Hey.
Evan was asleep during that part though, so.
Wow. That's awesome. Cool.
Listen
Guys,
to us quoting scripture like we're a bunch of Protestants.
Man, all you need now are some
We're taking
snakes.
back the Bible.
You just need some snakes.
If one of us
came
would
through, I
have
have no
it,
idea. I got no reactions right now, so hopefully you're laughing. I have no idea.
we laughed for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank God.
So I'm using all my best material tonight. I have no idea if it's going.
This cliffhanger moment, you're just frozen like this.
I will never get over you freezing during that incredibly profound comment, or what we thought was a profound comment. It was actually
It was
a
about the
tiger.
tiger.
We're starting to go back and I need to go back and
I
watch
will
that.
literally never get over that ever. I'll never get over that.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, it's 10:15. So
Cow.
yeah. So we technically did a full 2 hours. Kevin.
We're keeping
So-
Nice.
going. We're
Good
good.
intro
And
session.
also, I just have to
going
put this out there because
going
I'm so annoyed. If you guys just saw me clicking around the last 5 minutes, it's because I just realized I'm on the wrong YouTube account. And so anyone who was waiting to like get the alert didn't get it.
Oh, I see.
So,
I see.
oh well, it is what it is. We're gonna get this
So
right
is,
next
is
time.
this like from the live chat account or
Anything
what?
you guys want to add before we like close it out?
I
Yeah,
missed
no,
what-
actually,
what
we're
happened?
now we're streaming from my Illinois Right to Life account right now. So, oops.
Nice.
So,
Is that a
do you
problem?
guys have any like last? No, it's fine. Do you have any last minute comments before we like close it out?
I mean, my advice, pray, fast, keep your priests in your prayers.
Yeah.
Just keep on
Amen.
keeping on as much as you can. I don't know. Hopefully this has been as enjoyable for others as it has been for us. Obviously, we've had a good time. But,
The podcast, not the coronavirus, obviously.
Thanks for clarifying.
It's worth
Just wanted to-
separating.
We're having so-
Oh yeah. Happy Easter, Holy Week. Let's make it a good Holy Week.
Amen.
Yeah. I
Divine
don't like-
Mercy, no, Divine Mercy novena starts on Friday.
Correct.
So
yes, it does.
anybody who wants to get on that business.
Are we assuming that all indulgences are gonna have the as soon as possible for confession and the Eucharist now?
I don't see how you can get around that.
Well, but my question is, would they? I mean, I guess it's God if He decides to dispense them or not. I don't want. I guess I have a habit of getting too technical about those things sometimes. So, never mind.
Somehow Dan was finally able to comment. He just commented, "Dang."
Dang.
That's it. I'm sorry.
Are the
Keep
com-
going. I'm sorry.
The
I
comments
just
should
saw it
all
pop up.
link
He's
to the
been trying to
moment that they were
for so
sent,
long.
so you
Okay.
can see if they're responding to something in particular or not.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying? Go ahead. I just saw it pop up and it just pulled my attention away. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't important, and now repeating it is gonna
Okay.
make it so-
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Tim, Kevin, Evan?
I'm excited to do
Kevin,
this on a
Evan.
weekly basis.
Are we
Yep.
committed,
I
are we
don't-
committed
I
to
don't-
that right now? Are we
I
committed
think
to
so.
weekly
I mean, I don't really care what the people.
Oh no.
And I do this, and I have for internet.
Internet. I heard that one.
More
I
audio
didn't even come through
than
today.
T-Pain tonight.
And Carol Baskins.
And Carol Baskin.
I think Kevin O'Malley wins for the comment tonight. That was
That is. If we're doing this weekly, that's an award, right? That we have to.
Did anything come through?
Yeah.
I heard
We
internet.
should do-
We're
Okay.
the internet.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this
You did
every
your
week.
internet.
the
Yeah.
Kevin O'Malley Funny Quip Award goes to Kevin O'Malley.
We're gonna do okay, so we're gonna do this every week, and every week we're gonna give out an award for best comment. And tonight it was Kevin, right?
Nice.
O'Malley.
O'Malley.
Also Kevin Gregus for
Nice job,
that
Kev.
great
He
Tiger
supplied
King
the
joke that he
content
made.
for the comment, so I think he's got the assist on that one.
Nice. All right,
we
anything
end in
else?
prayer?
Well, yeah, let's end in prayer. Who's gonna lead us in prayer?
I will. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you remain with us and with all of our families this Holy Week. Please give us the graces to keep this week special, and please pour out your comfort upon all those who are lonely, all those who are isolated, all those who are sick, and bring us back into your fold and give us trust in your mercy and grace. For all this we pray. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning,
As it was in the beginning, is
never
now,
shall
and ever
be.
shall be.
Never shall be.
Amen.
World without
Amen.
end. Amen.
The old Zoom prayer.
Yeah.
Not in
The
sync
old Zoom prayer.
whatsoever.
All right.
Cool. All right,
So-
so that was
Good talk, guys.
muy bien.
Yeah, great,
Boom.
great.
All right, next week. Wait, are we gonna do this every Monday at 8 p.m. or do we need to just make it different every week?
I don't know. Should we figure this out when we're on live or?
Now let's.
All right, fine.
Why
I
not?
wanted to tell the people, but that's fine.
Oh.
Whatever. All right.
The people,
All right.
the people must know.
I'm gonna take us. I'm
Give it
taking
back.
us
Well,
off.
we'll give
I'm
it back
taking
to
us off
you, the people.
live. Our 18 viewers. There are 18 people who've watched this whole thing, which is very
God bless
impressive.
them.
God bless.
That's very
Seminarian
impressive
blessing
to
for
me.
you. God bless.
God bless them.
Which doesn't do anything, by the way. Just putting that out there. Not a thing.
It's like getting blessed by a Eucharistic minister.
Exactly. Right.
Boom! Boom! All right, end it there. End it there. We can't beat that. It's done.
Talk about that next week.
Nice little teaser for you. A little teaser.
Click. All right, I'm taking us off live.
All right, that's a good idea.
See you all next.
All right.
Everybody.